Levarme la moustache en la capuchon. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki tacatiki. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sito patanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sani levarme la moustache en la capuchon.
What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. And today, I'm going to talk about something that was going on with me and started to make me feel a little nostalgic as I was going through it. I was listening to all the stories of this season, of this upcoming season, and it just made me say, man, why have I heard these stories before? Why does everything seem to sound the same? And I couldn't really understand why. Everything from having a top defense and our young ends, and if the quarterback doesn't be quite the quarterback that they were, this team can be successful. And I kept thinking, it's like, man, all these stories sound the same. I've heard these stories before. Almost having deja vu. And then I thought about it. All these stories are reminding me of the 2011 team. That offseason, everybody was talking about how that team was going to have a top defense. At that time, we had young players and a fairly okay draft and things like that, and I just remember this because it all seems to come back together again. Now, a lot of you are going to say, oh, that 2011 team, that team wasn't that good. They went 5-11. I don't think y'all remember how good that team, or how good the talent on that team was. So I'm going to start there, because and everything that I say is going to get you understanding why the trepidation I have regarding the team this year, because I couldn't find out why. I kind of was like, I feel that I've seen this before. I feel that I've heard these stories before. It's giving me nostalgia. Let's start with the defensive line. Of course, we all know this year's defensive line is considered one of the best. Well, guess what? In 2011, that defensive line was also considered one of the best. If y'all remember the people on that line, now I'm going to break it down for y'all. We had Barry Cofield at the nose. At right defensive end was Adam Carricker, a pass rush guy. At left defensive end was Stephen Bowen, who was in Dallas but came here and actually put together a stellar season. And then we had two young ends. Third-year pro Brian Arakpo and rookie Ryan Kerrigan. Also, the talk was of our linebacker winning an award. Defensive Player of the Year, making the Pro Bowl, middle linebacker London Fletcher. We had a growing into his own and was even really, really good, Perry Riley. Backing them up was Rob Jackson, who actually did a fairly good job, even coming in and playing at times, and Rocky McIntosh. They were really, at that time, they were a good linebacking core. We had a three-headed rotation at the safety position, which was LaRon Landry, O.J. Atogwe, and Reed Dowdy. Now, I know a lot of y'all gonna say, oh, when I remember Reed, he wasn't that good. That year, Reed played very well. The year before that, I think he played well. He also played well. At one cornerback, we had D'Angelo Hall. Remember, I don't know if all y'all remember, that year we only had one question mark on that team. And that was the cornerback position opposite D'Angelo Hall. And we went out and we got Josh Wilson, and backing him up was Philip Buchanan. That team was touted about being a top defense. That team was talked about being a top defense. Do you guys see the similarities that we're going through right now? A strong defensive line, two young ends, linebackers starting to get it together or already got it together, a fairly decent secondary with rotating safeties, question marks, not that much, only at the linebacker position, but again, just the one question mark. There's similarities there. Then let's talk about the offense on that team. This team, the 2011 team, I think everybody forgets how talented that team was. Let's talk about the offense. At offensive line, we had second-year pro Trent Williams, who has started to really develop into this Pro Bowl, All-Pro, possible Hall of Fame tackle. Beside him, we had rookie Maurice Hurt, who himself played very well that year. At center, we had Will Montgomery, who was a steady center for us. At right guard, we had Chris Chester, who came from Baltimore. And then at right tackle, we had a combination of Jamal Brown, who came from New Orleans and did a fantastic job in New Orleans, and Tyler Columbus. We had a very solid offensive line that year. Then you think about our running back room. Our running back room consisted of a two-headed beast in Roy Halou and Tim Hightower, and they were backed up by Evan Royster and Ryan Torain, who the year before showed us he could be a quality back, along with a converted Darrell Young at fullback. Then let's talk about our tight end room. Our tight end room consisted of Chris Cooley, who was now moved into a backup position, Fred Davis, who started to really groom himself and develop. Even though he had his problems, he was developing into a really good tight end. They were backed up by Niles Paul and the recently converted from fullback to tight end, Mike Sellers. Then let's talk about the wide receiver room. The wide receiver room consisted of our top guy in Santana Moss, a guy we got from free agency in Jabbar Gaffney, who, by the way, that year almost cracked 1,000 yards receiving. And we got Dante Stallworth. We yanked him from the Eagles to play the slot, along with having a young wide receiver, kind of youngish wide receiver, who stood out to us really well in Anthony Armstrong. On special teams, we had two stellar players on special teams, who was also at times playing on the offense and defense, and that was Lorenzo Alexander and Brandon Banks. That team was stacked talently. Talent was all over that team. Just like this team. Talent is all over this team. All over it. Then we had a head coach who came with very good credentials in his second year, and Mike Shanahan. The defense was led by former NFL linebacker turned great defensive coordinator Jim Haslett. And the offense was being done by second year offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan. Don't y'all see the similarities here? Don't y'all see the similarities? And everything that was going on, the only big question that kept being talked about is this team could win if only Rex Grossman didn't do Rex Grossman things. Think about that. The story we are constantly hearing right now. This team could be great. This new team could be great if Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't do Ryan Fitzpatrick things. The only thing that's not a similarity to this whole thing is that the backup is actually far better than the backup we had in 2011. How many of y'all remember how that 2011 team started out? They technically should have gone 4-0 before the bye. That team sat up there and went 3-1. And the loss they had to Dallas, if y'all remember, that was a defensive game. Remember, Tim Hightower was the only one who scored a touchdown in that game. It was basically a kicker's battle. Graham Gano and Dan Bailey went against each other like crazy. And if y'all remember towards the end of the game, Rex Grossman let us down. He got sacked, fumbled the ball, and Dallas recovered. That's how we lost that game. But in actuality, we should have went 4-0. Remember, that defense, at the time, I think they were ranked 5th or 6th. They were giving up no red zone touchdowns. Remember, that was the big thing. They were practically giving up no red zone touchdowns, and they were very efficient on third down. Very efficient on third down. And then Rex Grossman started doing Rex Grossman things. And he started to ruin the team. He started to throw a buttload of picks. He started to do all types of things that would get us in trouble. And in turn, we end up going 5-11 that year. Why? Because the defense stayed on the field constantly. Rex Grossman would come out the bye, and immediately out of the bye, his first game out of the bye was 4 interceptions to Philadelphia. First game out the bye week, 4 interceptions. Now, if y'all can remember, because for all of you Ryan Fitzpatrick fans, Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't benched during a game or benched while the season was still going on. Ryan Fitzpatrick got benched after the bye week in Miami because he was playing so poorly. Now, for all of you who don't understand that the similarities are there, this is why I'm so worried about this year's team, especially when it comes to Ryan Fitzpatrick helming the whole thing. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the one who said that he is playing better football since the whole time he's been in the league. But guess what? We've seen 17 years of Ryan Fitzpatrick. We saw Ryan Fitzpatrick last year. This man, even though he didn't have a ton of interceptions, but guess what? He was the cause for the team losing a lot of those games. The man had, I think, like 5 interceptions, but he also had, like, I think it was like 11 or 12 sacks. I think it was 12 sacks. He was the root cause that Miami was losing early on and why they benched him after the bye week. Understand that he went through several practices before they sat up there and said, you know what, we're going through with the young kid coming out of the bye. These similarities worry me a little bit. Do I feel our defense is going to be great? Yes. But how great is it going to be if every time we turn around, Ryan Fitzpatrick is throwing picks and putting them on the field a la 2011 where Rex Grossman did the exact same thing. Our defense that was stellar that year burned out early because they were on the field all the time. I want to believe as well. I think that this team is a very good team. I think that they're going in the right direction. I think that everything is right. But I think that our head coach, like Mike Shanahan, is sold us on a bill of goods on a quarterback that we know is turnover prone. Not to mention both of them's first names start with an R. I hope we do really good this season, but understand, I still feel those similarities. And I don't know, y'all. If Ryan Fitzpatrick does Ryan Fitzpatrick things, no. If Ryan Fitzpatrick does Rex Grossman things, then we're going to have a 5-11, or I'm sorry, 5-12 type of season. Again, we're seeing a first place schedule. We're seeing some really solid defenses this year. Really solid, especially in their secondaries. Ryan Fitzpatrick get to throwing picks. We're talking about the possibility of this team not being as good as they were last year. This has been your man John Fortune, and this has been the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.